So thank you, Nanda, and hello to everyone here. Well, I'm a big believer that buildings are meant to complement their context, and this can only happen when the core of the design is rooted in true bioclimatic principles and encourage a natural ecosystem that acts as an environmental modifier for its users. And since the start of Midori 5 years ago, we have been very fortunate to get clients who are literally tree huggers and really care about the future of our planet. And it's more so important given the current, climate change acceleration that we're seeing around us. And our aim has been to prioritize processes in climate responsiveness through our green approach for all our projects. And we're able to produce ecologically sensitive solutions, be it an interior space or a part of an exterior architecture. It can come to fruition only when it is in tune with the local and vernacular. And this building with natural materials and reviving traditional crafts and harnessing local talent is something that's a priority for us. And it's also good that key market-driven green schemes like LEED and IGBC. I know that you also work a lot on these kinds of projects. Encourage the use of local materials and local talent, which is great. And hopefully, even products that have a shorter life cycle that can be easily renewable rapidly. And that's something is which is something important, that we have to also conserve our resources in this planet because it is limited. And hopefully this would sort of revolutionize the supply chain and global trade. Right now everybody is into getting furniture manufactured in a country like China and bring it down because of the prices. And the craftsmen here can't really compete and sustain in those kind of scenarios. So for me, your question about beauty, personally for me, beauty lies in the discovery of a traditional technique and then sort of experimenting it in an artistic and authentic way that aims to create a kind of a high quality space for your client and examine a kind of a positive human behavior through all of this. And in this exploration, in both creation and repair, and improvising it in a way to meet the challenge of bringing it to the modern era, that's something that I find very interesting. And usually, sometimes it's done in ways which probably the traditional craft was not meant for. And the clients that come to us increasingly are second generation. So they're in the cusp of a paradigm shift between the old and new. So while they seek traditional values such as Vastu, which is something that's extremely an example of what is important in planning, but also have a huge appetite for modern aesthetics. And I think using the crafts does provide an experience that creates something very unique to the context and not sort of a cookie cutter home or an international style, one size fits all sort of an approach. And I think for that, architects need to really hone in their adaptability skills, and that is really paramount. Yeah, so I mean, all fantastic thoughts there, and I completely agree with Pony as well. Where do I start? Technology is just here to stay, from augmented reality to before construction, 3D printing, using artificial intelligence within the design process. Or it's increasingly rare to see any architectural project that does not use some kind of a digital tool or some kind of parameter for design or fabrication. And if it's a performative criteria, whether it's structural or geometric relationships, environmental or experiential qualities like light or airflow. I think the biggest criticism of the so-called parametricism and digital architecture is that when it is realized, and if it is realized, that it's not sensitive to the contextual issues. And I think that's something that we need to work on, because the historic, unlike historic buildings that are really deep steeped in local context. And to one thing about sidelining the artisan, I think we have to bridge the gap. They need to up their game, and also we depend on vendors and the supply chain to kind of help us bridge this gap. So we have to rethink the basic building blocks and the ability that buildings need to be constructed in a certain time frame. And if there was a way in which there was some kind of prefabricated elements or modularity where we could use this in interesting way, but also be able to build it at an incredibly fast rate and streamlining the craftsmanship process, so that, carpenters back in the day, they used to season wood under different weather conditions, and it used to take years, and nobody has that kind of time and luxury of time these days. So if somehow the entire sort of production chain can work in a way in which the rethink the stages of production rather than mass customization, I think that would be the key, and make it more relevant towards today's urgent issues. And I think that's a good way to bring back the mixture of old and new in a good way. So that's pretty much my thoughts on this.
Great.
I completely agree on that last point. I think it's also about shifting the way in which we look at craft, and it involves some sort of trend setting. But I also struggle as an architect, because we are generalists and we sort of have a specialty in a certain area, unlike, the Renaissance master architects who were good sculptors and mathematicians and, architects and painters. So with every project, I lack a lot of knowledge when it comes to the vernacular technique. So I tend to bring on the expert and it kind of learn as much as I can about the material and how it's made in situ on site before I introduce it to the client and try to sell it in a way and package it in a way that I know he's going to like and accept, or so I do believe craftsmanship is precious resource and it should be carefully employed rather than sort of exploited. And there are a lot of awareness programs out there, and we need to work on more workshops, educate the architects themselves so that they could then, and vendors are very good in doing this. And also there are great initiatives where we should collaborate between artisans and urban designers and brands to sort of explore opportunities together to create these kinds of trends that we were just speaking about. And you have great foundations like Auroville Building Center and a Center for Vernacular Architecture that help promote these skills and link up architects with the right craftsmen and the right talent. And I think that gap needs to be bridged and is completely missing in because we are also insular in our own world and so busy with what we're doing that we don't really go out there and actively seek this. And so it really comes down to a matter of time. And I feel if the outreach programs were easier to communicate with, then we wouldn't have that sort of gap, and we could probably push the clients to get there. And I think architects are responsible not only for how your buildings perform in terms of energy, but also to strive for a kind of bringing back memories of the past and generate narratives that kind of are with the present and kind of have a modern interpretation. I think that's what will work. That's where I see the way forward, especially with the clients I'm sort of dealing with. Yeah, I think that's my thoughts for now on this question on how to flourish the arts.
A little bit more.
Actually, I was like,
yeah. Say it loud and clear. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Salma, the key is really in storytelling and making them love the tradition. And I have a 4-year-old daughter, so a lot of it, I'm getting better at storytelling every night. So it's really about how you package it to the client, and really your business selling skills need to be completely, pull everything you can from all the best business books in the world. But it really lies in that storytelling and, good computer graphics and innovative design solutions. I'm sure the clients will definitely go for it. So I think that's where the key is. I think craftsmanship is a legacy. As young architects like myself, I think it's important we preserve it like an inheritance tool. And it reminds me of the story of that precious Japanese vase making crafts. I think it's called kintsugi, where when they are making the porcelain bowls, sometimes a few of them break. And what they do is they kind of put the shards back together with gold lacquered, sort of dusted adhesive, and it brings new meaning to that bowl, and that itself is like a trend. And I think that's how we should also approach it, where we are through better education and collaboration. We should revisit the vernacular crafts in a sort of a contemporary reinterpretation of the local heritage, and bring in that blend of form and texture and celebrate that sort of timeless aesthetic. And that's really the challenge for all of us as architects. I think we must approach it in that sort of way, rather than a craft gone, which we're never going to see again.